What's up, everybody? This sitting right behind me is Matt Schuessler's new buggy. You might not know who Matt Schuessler is, but you may have heard his buggy before. It is called the Attitude Buggy, and it has a screaming set of 180-degree headers. Matt came to us and wanted a new buggy for the 2019 season. Right behind me, we're starting off with our signature series Riot Chassis. This thing is going to be low to the ground, have tons of suspension travel, and be able to soak up the whoops. And behind me on that table over there are a pair of DYNO 80s that we're building specially for him. They're going to be 2-inch inside diameter shafts with 2 3/8 outers. We're using the Reed Big Bell stuff, 47 spline, inner spool, and it's going to be geared with Yukon gear and axles. This thing is going to be a monster because we're going to drop in an LSX 454 with a 4.5 liter Whipple. And if you're doing the math in your head, that's going to be about 1,600 horsepower. So stay tuned because this is going to be bad. So, project update on our buggy behind me, which is going to be the new Attitude Buggy. We've got the 4 links done, front and rear. In the rear, we've got a set of trailing arms. We've got the axle trusses and the axles all put together. Right here, we've got some aluminum links. These are 7075 T6 aluminum links. They're super strong. We make them here in-house, and they're taped up so we don't scratch them. Back here in the back, we decided to do something that was really cool. We actually Frenched the sway bar directly through the axle truss right here. So it's going to make a little bit cooler and sleeker of a design, which I really dig. And then up here on the top, you can see we just have these links sitting here in place so that we can measure for our aluminum links. Now, anytime you're building a vehicle like this, basically the first thing you need to do is get everything at ride height, because that's going to determine where you mount all your 4-link points, because you want this 4-link to be designed where the vehicle is going to spend most of its time, which is at ride height. Once we get your ride height done, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to move the axle up to full bump. Once we get the axle up to full bump, front and rear, we're going to collapse our shocks all the way, and then we're going to build our mounting points for the shocks coming from the chassis down to the 4-link bar. In this case, we're going to be put on trailing arms. In the front, we're going to be going from the chassis down to the axle. So once you know where your full bump area is, then you can determine how much travel this is going to have all the way around. So if you're ever building a 4-link, that's a great way to do it. Put it at ride height, get your 4-links designed, then put it at full bump, mount your shocks, because then you know that at full bump all the way up, your shocks will be fully compressed. This chassis is coming out really awesome. We're super excited for this thing to be done. Basically, everything is laid out exactly where we have done before in the past. It's all computer designed, so we know that everything is going to work out really well. Alright, so project update on this bad boy that's sitting right behind me. We've got the suspension all mocked up, we've got the steering on, and the reason that we do it in this order is because we want to make sure that when we put the steering on, we can turn the tire all the way from lock to lock and then flex it out all the way both ways and make sure that the tire isn't going to get into the shocks. Now, we've done this a couple times, so we know exactly where everything needs to go, but we still do that just to be 100% sure. Our shocks are mounted on the inside of this bar, and we just tacked it together with some temporary mounts, because once we get the engine put inside here, we're going to do some really cool Got bars up here in the front to kind of tie all this stuff together. You can check out our steering mount up here in the front. We use 188 wall DOM tubing with our Busted Knuckle off-road plate mounts right here for our 2.5-inch PSC ram. And if you look right here, some beautiful 7075 T6 aluminum arms are going on this guy. So that right there will keep covered up so it doesn't get all beat up. We got aluminum links all the way around, and let's take a look at the rear. Back in the back here, we are waiting to get the fuel cell done, which we're actually working on this week. We've already got the radiator situated with the weld bungs and AN fittings on it, so we know exactly where that's gonna sit. As you can tell, we don't have any bump stops back here in the back, and the reason is we're gonna put the drivetrain all the way in, and then we wanna make sure that our pinion angles are absolutely perfect. So we don't put the bump stop in because we don't want the pads to be crooked if we have to change our pinion angle. So what we do is we go ahead and put the motor, transmission, transfer case in, get it to ride height, point the pinion directly at the output shafts of the transfer case, and then when we go to full bump, we know exactly where our bump stops are gonna hit so that everything hits nice and perfect. You can see our sway bars installed. We've got our arms built, custom built right here, and those will attach to the subframe that comes from here and goes down to the front bars right there. Everything's ready to go. We've even got our Busted Knuckle off-road DYNO 60 3/8 thick plate covers. Those things are beef, and they got a lifetime replacement. Just kidding, DYNO 80. So this is the fuel cell, and we build all this in CAD. So I've got a SolidWorks file that basically has this entire situation bent up and everything in CAD. And what we can do is we cut it out on our plasma table, and then we bring it over to the press brake. We press brake everything out, and all these pieces fit together like a little jigsaw puzzle when it's all said and done. So here in a little bit, we'll go ahead and start welding all this stuff together. We've got this really slick back cap right here. This bolts on all the way around with studs coming through the backside, and then the top plate sits down. That's where your gas cap goes and your vent. And so basically, once we have all this welded together, we're gonna be done on this project waiting for the motor and transmission and everything to show up, but I believe it just did. Let's check it out.
What y'all eating?
Y'all about good? Ramen from the homeland, fresh.
From the home.
Yeah, I got some cheese sticks.
Is that Oklahoma?
Yep.
Woo, baby. 4.5 liter Whipple on a 454 LSX. This thing is sweet. Let's take a look real quick. Woo, baby.
Woo. That is what horse pressures looks like right there.
All right, so we are at the next step of the build. We've already got the fuel cell and the radiator installed. Everything is good back there in the back, but now it's time to focus on this big motor we've got sitting here. We did not have a file in CAD for this big 4.5 liter Whipple, so we didn't know exactly how tall it was gonna be. So what we did is we left that top bar right there not welded so we could take it out, just in case it was gonna be a little bit too high, and sure enough, it is too high. So we're gonna have to take that back bar, cut it out, and then raise it up a little bit higher so that the air inlet can come in from the back. This motor, not sure how much horsepower it's gonna make, but it's gonna be a lot, because that is a big blower on a big LSX 454. So the name of the game in rock bouncing is all about center of gravity and keeping the drivetrain as low as possible so that the vehicle's really stable. So when we build this engine, or when we put this engine in, we want to build the chassis so that the center of gravity is right in the right spot for our suspension to work perfectly. If the engine's too far forward and you've got too much weight in the front, the rear likes to dance around. If you get it too far back, it likes to wheelie. So there's a perfect spot. We're not going to tell you what that is, but we try to get our center of gravity in the right spot. Now, we've got a really short transmission here. This is a powerglide. It's got all the bells and whistles. This thing is built to the kilt. And we've got an SCS straight drive case back here. So the entire drivetrain is going to be pretty short. And because of that, we're trying to shift the motor back as far as we possibly can to get the center of gravity where it needs to be. It looks like we're going to have a problem getting it all the way back and still being able to have leg room. So to make up for that, we're going to put all of our heavy accessories back here in the back to try to even the weight out front and rear. About halfway through the build, we start putting scales on this thing, and we're going to figure out exactly how much weight we need to put in what area so that this rig is nice and balanced when it's all said and done. Right here, we got some wicked sweet stainless steel 2 1/8 inch headers. Now, this big Whipple supercharger we have is going to pump out a lot of exhaust. So we needed something big that we could flow a lot of power through. So these headers, We want them to come up and turn and drop back down and kick out the sides, so whenever this thing is on the pipe and it's slinging mud off those tires, it blows it out the side. You can tell we've got a whole lot of stuff done. The belt's up here in the front. We've got this all situated, so this is going to run a single 10-inch rib belt right off the front of the blower by itself. We have a lot of problems with guys who are trying to run all the accessories off of one belt. It tends to throw the belt off or break the belt. So we've got this 10 rib that's going to be turning this blower all by itself, and then we have a separate 6 rib that's going to sit back here that only turns the accessories. We were going to do 180-degree headers on this, but we had some space concerns back here in the back with the intake. We brought the customer in, told them about everything that we were doing, and we decided that we were going to dump out the headers on the side. It'll keep any type of heat from trying to soak into the blower, keep the foot room back here in the back where it needs to be, and keep these belts nice and cool, which is a really big problem sometimes. We got him fitted for his seat, set him inside here, and we had a little bit of a space issue. His seat was a little bit wider, so we ended up getting into the brake caliper right here in the rotor. So we had to cut the seat off. We're going to build him a nice little sheet guard right there to keep the heat down off of his legs. And over here on the passenger side, you can see we're starting to lay out all of our accessories. Won't be too long, and this thing will be ready to ride. So as you can see, I'm actually sitting inside of the rib cage of our client. This guy's big. He's not the average type person, so setting up the cockpit is getting to be very difficult. We're trying to figure out where we're going to mount switches, and we're trying to figure out where everything needs to lay down, and it's just creating a challenge because we don't have anybody in the shop that's quite as big as this guy. But as you can tell, we have a really, really awesome layout here. We actually decided to roll the whole dashboard around to give it a nice, elegant look inside. Our gauges are going to be sitting here. Steering column is going to come through this point right here. And then right here you can see where we've went ahead and masked out for where we're going to cut the hole for the fan to come through for the intercooler. So just underneath this panel, we actually have the intercooler for the supercharger. And if you look, right here we've got some stainless mesh so that when that fan is pulling air up, it's pulling cool air through these stainless mesh right here. We got our rear steer, we got our shifter, we've got a lot of the plumbing and wiring started, and it's coming together really, really nicely. So sometimes I like to sit in these buggies late at night while everybody was gone and just kind of think about my race days and how I'd want everything laid out, because it kind of reminds me of all the different little things that you learn throughout the years of what to do, what not to do. And one of the things we were talking about were the switches. You know, if you have the switches too close to your hand and you hit a big hit or something, you'll actually accidentally turn the buggy off. So we're trying to figure out where we can put the switches where he can get to them, but he can't accidentally get to them. And this is proposing a little bit of a challenge for us, but the overall layout, the way the cockpit's coming together, I can't be more proud of our team. They're doing an excellent job. So this engine creates a lot of challenges in the off-road industry because we have to think about the vehicle running standard, regular, just driving, but then we also have to think about what happens when the vehicle flips upside down. We don't want the vehicle to catch on fire. Everything has to have catch cans. It has to have all sorts of different systems to stop that from happening. Now, on this particular engine, it's a supercharged engine, so once you start creating boost, you start getting a lot of crankcase pressure. Well, you have to be able to relieve that crankcase pressure. So off the back of the valve covers, we have some dash 12 bungs welded in back here at the back of the valve covers. And what we do is we run a dash 12 line, which is a 3/4 inch line, and it goes from one side of the valve cover and the other side of the valve cover. They go under the motor, they cross, and then they go below the engine and come back out to the sides. And what that does is it allows all of the pressure to relieve off of the crankcase and vent out to atmosphere. Now what the crossing does is makes it so that if you flip over onto your side, oil coming out of that valve cover will get into that line, but it can't spill out all over the ground. So no matter which way you turn the motor, left, right, upside down, doesn't matter, the line will always be higher than the oil and the contents of the engine. These things right here, we've got a fluid containment video, and these things are what we use. They actually go on the end of our lines here, and they will actually dump out over here. It keeps any type of contaminants from making it back into the engine, and also lets the engine breathe the way it's supposed to under boost. So this system works really well. You can see we've got a ton of plumbing and everything else done up here in the front. All this stuff, every system that we have is for a reason. All these different systems, all this different plumbing, it's made to make this vehicle steer great, have great horsepower, because you're not holding the top of the valve covers under pressure, you're not blowing out your dipstick, you've got plenty of air pushing out to the outsides. Power steering pump, the entire loop is made so that as you're going up a hill, the reservoir is feeding into the pump goes straight over to here, turns around, makes a very smooth loop all the way around. We only have, I think, a 45 and 190 in the whole system. Everything else is straight. So this buggy should steer really well. We've got all the plumbing coming from the back of the fuel tank all the way up here to the front. It's all running dash 12 because this thing's going to be making some serious horsepower. We're not going to tell you exactly how much. We're going to let you guys find that out in the next videos whenever we're showing this thing on the dyno. But 4.5 liter Whipple on a 454 LSX, all you guys out there know that this thing's going to produce a lot of power. Well, as you can see, we are hard at it. Every one of the guys is doing a job. Yeah. Tell us what's going on right now.
Working our butt off.
Working your butt off, right? That's right. We've got one more day left to get this thing pumped out. We got a whole bunch more to do. What are you working on, Adam?
So he can strap himself in and get good and tight.
So we've got these straps, like on these belts right here, that are actually ratchet style, and so we had to build a bracket with a bushing on the inside. And so now, basically this ratchets back and forth, and it tightens up over here so he can ratchet himself inside the belt. What do you think?
I think it's squared away. Final welds.
Raymond's over here working on panels. He's been the guy doing all this interior work over in here. Take a look at that. Absolutely beautiful. So we've got all the gauges and stuff are in. Raymond was able to get us hooked up. If you can see back here, we put this really cool design with a mesh back over in there, and we're doing some cool stuff right here in this area. Raymond's been hard at it, been working like crazy. About fell asleep on the way home the other day. Chris is taking care of all the electrical work over here. We've got wires being run absolutely everywhere. Got Robbie. Robbie, what are you working on?
Working on getting this thing ready to go to powder.
Getting ready to go to powder. So he's stripping everything. We had everything put together this morning, and as you can tell, everything is stripped down. We got the axle about ready to come out. Everybody's doing their thing. I'm even in here working on some last minute panels and stuff, and it won't be long, this thing will be ready to go. We got our trailer backed up.
That'll be tank?
Yeah, so basically, no, you unbolt these bolts right here, then these bolts will go around the face, and this transfer case will actually come off the backside, and then the gears and stuff will be with it. This little adapter should come out with the transmission. Should be able to go out with it. What's up, everybody? This is the very last day that we have on this build that we are working on for Matt Schuessler. This bad influence buggy is going to be one sweet joker, but as you can tell, you know, we've got a big ensemble going on back here. We've got a whole bunch of stuff happening. We've got 5 guys working on this thing full time for the past 2 weeks, and it's been absolutely insanity to get this thing done. A lot of people, they forget what all it takes to get done at the last minute. You know, you do all the math on the big stuff, motor, transmission, transfer case, chassis, wheels, tires, axles, all that stuff. But I'm telling you, at the last minute, whenever you start building one of these rigs, the little stuff will nickel and dime you to death. All the plumbing and wiring and the man hours that it takes to do panels and getting everything lined up just so perfect. So that's what stage we're in right now. We've actually got guys working on this thing on top of each other. So inside of this big trailer back here behind me, you can see this thing right here. We're gonna get this thing loaded up here in just a minute, and we're gonna take this buggy down to powder coat and make it start looking good. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you wanna see more of this rig after powder coat, after the dyno tunes, and see it race, make sure you stay tuned for our next video.